Wytchwood is dry for the most part. Both bottom and top have reached that nice paper clay hardness, and the balloon is still intact. I attribute that to both luck and the double layering, though you can see that the top of the balloon is pushing out because as this has dried, the stuff has lost water and constricted a bit. This is still a-okay and perfect, and I have never had a trouble with this constricting to a point where the light has not gone back in. But here's a quick detail sweep of the bottom. And as is so common with me saying in the case of these Wytchwood projects, if you like it here, you can stop and move on to the next step. I don't. For me, I find that a lot of these middle areas, this is okay detail, but it's not enough for me. I like this to be more full of both branch detail, and I also really like to have some sideways scraping branches. I like to have my little curly Q in the old Tim Burton style, which I like to call Burton curls. I love to have those in my project. So I'm going to spend a little time adding more detail to my supports, get them a little bit more branchy, weave those branches a little bit more into the design, and add some extra detail into this kind of interstitial open space. I don't want to add too much in here because this is where all the light is going to beam forth from, but I don't want it this empty either. So this is all going to be done with the unrolled cotton balls. I am not going to be using the cotton coil for this. This just gives me more, how to put it, this gives me more malleability and flexibility in my design. The coils are great for making these things, these little wormwood pieces, as fast as possible, but this just gives me, look, I started using these things, damn it, I'm used to them. So that's why I'm doing it. There's no logic, there's no reason. I started with it, I'm comfy with it, and that's why I do it. I just did a careful inspection to make sure that I didn't have any areas that I would flatten against the orb holder along the bottom. And there's some improvements that I made to the pre-existing drop downs. Threw on a little Burton curl there. Branched that out a little bit more. Secondary little Burton curl from the bottom. Add a little bit more root and branch and twist structure. Nothing major. Just didn't want to leave it quite as it was. Though at this point, I'll put it back in its holder. Give it some more drying time. If you choose to do this step as well, you want to make sure that at this point, if you have any root structures that are going further down, that the bottom of your orb holder doesn't whack into those improvements / adjustments you just made and leave a crease growing through that cotton. The only thing I'm going to do next is we're going to let this dry, and then we're going to hot glue on and fix in our protuberances with a last little bit of cotton gobbledygook, and then this thing is ready for sealing and staining. Project is all dry from a good old night. Now, I hate to burst your balloon on a bad pun, but it's time to pop this thing. In order to do that, though, we do not just want to jab in and let this thing go pop, because we have all these tiny little bits of cotton in here that are ready to explode inward. And if this thing pops rapidly, there is a chance that all these tiny bits that are stuck to our balloon will want to come in with the balloon and cause a great bunch of snapping, and the stuff's going to go get pulled in with it. That is not what we want. So we need a controlled poppening. In order to get a controlled poppening, you need some tape of some sort. Masking tape, scotch tape, doesn't really matter what kind of tape you've got. But you want to cover some spot of the balloon with some tape. I also like to push the balloon down a little bit and start to free up some surface from the balloon. You're going to be doing this regularly as you go through and trying to push the balloon back from the cotton insides where it is stuck. Then take a handy popping protrusion and puncture it in the spot where you have the tape, and that balloon's going to start to lose air at a nice controlled slow speed. And now you just put your hands in there and pull it back from the fibers as it deflates. As it deflates. As it deflates. I'm pulling it back from the fibers. Pulling it back. Pulling it back. Some spots are not going to be into great control. You may want to reach in from the side, push it away from the fibers. You can also reach in, give it a tug. But you want a nice slow deflate. Eventually you get to a point where the thing is pretty much freed from all the outer fibers, and you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy as that balloon loses it. It's always kind of the fun stage too. Eventually it will separate. Eventually. I think this is largely because I have the double layer balloon rather than a single. And once it's completely free though, now you can pop it fully with no great issue or problem. You just don't want the explosive pop effect. Say farewell to your balloon. It has done its job. Hopefully yours has not gone kablooey on you. And you are left with the main outline of the witch orb and a curious cat who is going to investigate the balloon that I just dumped into the trash. However, you may find that you are left with all sorts of machined up pieces like this. In order to get this stuff out of there, grab an X-Acto or something and just kind of hack away at the extra mache between the fibers. Okay, for the most part, here is your witch orb. The outside of it at the very least. One thing to check on at this point though is to reach inside with your finger and make sure that the cotton in there is dry all the way around and through. You may occasionally find that some of this stuff in here has gotten a little damp and has stayed that way, whether you wanted it to or not. I also notice on this one, it looks like I've got a few spots of mold on the inside. I'm really not terribly concerned about that at all, since once this is all set, stained, and locked, it really won't matter at all, because this will be urethaned over. No mold will have a chance to grow again in the dryness. Next stage, though, is going to be adding on our protuberances, starting with the rings that we have for whatever we choose to loop this through on the top. You might find that these still have a little bit of give to them with the wire inside if you don't like how they are shaped and formed. But now we've got to get them on. Since I use 3, I try to find 3 relatively equidistant spots on the top that I think will be good for my rope. The other thing I find is that very often these pieces will find niches inside the Wytchwood wormwood stuff here, the wormies, to fit in, almost like a puzzle piece. If you've ever done rock stacking, it's almost like that. You'll kind of feel a little spot where it feels like it clicks on and works. So I kind of just lay them in there and try to feel for where they will fit best. On this one I've already found a couple, but I've pasted around looking for others. But once you find a spot that you like, and I haven't found a spot I like completely yet, I don't want to drop it on the floor, I'm going to go with this one first. Well, suffice to say, I'm going to get this going. When I find where it links up the best, then I'll show you the next step. Grab some hot glue. Hot glue your piece all along the edge that's going to make contact with the orb. mash that sucker on. And give that hot glue time to cool. When I first did this, I tried taking hot glue and really just filling in all the gaps. You don't want to do that too excessively, because later on you take a little bit more cotton and you have to cover this up, because hot glue won't absorb the stain terribly well. So you don't want a ton of exposed hot glue. Alright, this one being here means my other ones have to be at opposed angles to it. It really helps if you can do this right the first time. So double, triple check your piece, quadruple check your piece before you add that hot glue and lock it in. If you want to save yourself time and effort, you could make a single loop that was much larger and just put that squarely on the top, and then you're only hanging by a single thread. Bear in mind though, that means the entire weight of your project is hanging by one single hot glued on piece, with probably a significant amount of cotton reinforcement, since that's the next step. So distribute your weight accordingly. There's my 3 loops attached. I am going to look for any kind of seams between the orb and the loop, and anywhere I can get the snout of my hot glue gun in there and put some low profile hot glue reinforcement, I'm going to do that. So those are mostly locked in place.